So let's jump in the world of comics, right?
Yeah.
What uh what comics do you collect? What are you looking for when you're thinking about adding a new comic to your collection?
Yeah, so it's a couple of things. One thing I would tell you is if I'm buying because I want to own it, I want it in my collection, and I'm concerned about what that price is going to be in the future. I mean, it's going to get really expensive. I'm looking 5, 6 years out on the Disney movie timeline.
Okay.
So the most recent example I can give you is the Silver Surfer run. I went ahead and chased the run of when Silver Surfer came out as a in his first appearances, it was in Fantastic Four, issue 48, 49, and 50. Or 49, yeah, 48, 49, and 50. 3-issue miniseries. What's interesting is that 3 issues was written as a movie script. Stan Lee and
Okay.
them, when they wrote it, they were doing it as if it was going to be a movie one day. So it's really fascinating. And you have the first appearance of Galactus, first appearance of Silver Surfer.
Hmm.
And I went ahead and grabbed those and the grades that I wanted. And then I started chasing the issues 1 through 18, which is Silver Surfer's first full title issue run, which I think has incredible cover art, and cover
Yeah.
art's important to me as a comic book collector. And I went ahead and finished those out. And so that's what I'm doing in terms of like a collecting space is like, hey, what do I need to go ahead and grab before it captures the rest of the world's attention and starts getting bought up?
So when you grade, are you pressing comics, cleaning comics,
Mhm.
or okay? Because I know there are some
Yes,
graders that send in the comics the way they are.
for sure. And I have sent a few in the way they were just because of not wanting to be delayed in getting it. But those were mainly like somewhat spec books that I wanted to flip, kind of thing. But I have a real good friend named Daniel Dunn who owns Valor Comics. He's got a YouTube channel, Instagram. He lives here
Check them out.
locally. He does a
Yeah.
Valor Comics. He does a fantastic job. And he does all my pressing, cleaning, and grading. And if you could see the 9.8s back there, you would know that he had his hand on
Oh, I'm
those.
seeing them. Yeah, I see them up there.
Yeah.
Yeah, very cool.
Yeah.
Well, are there certain grades? Because I talk to different comic book collectors. Are there certain grades that you look for more with, compared to certain years of the comic, or what's the decision making process that you go through?
Well, for me, if it's a modern book, it needs to be a 9.8, unless there's something else going around it. I
Hmm.
want to be really careful with variants. That means, it's not the first print cover, it's a variant. If the variant isn't attached to a first appearance or a major comic book storyline event, variants make me nervous for long term potential,
Hmm.
regardless of print run and rarity for that matter. Okay. Um, in your older comic books, and I'm not going to get into Silver Age, Bronze Age,
Yeah,
and those things.
yeah.
But if I'm buying an older, more expensive comic book, I don't mind it in a 4.0. That's kind of a number that I've settled on, just in terms of like being consistent in grades across the board in that area for the most part. But at the same time, I would tell you I have a first appearance of Punisher, which is AMS 129, Amazing Spider-Man number 129. It's in a 7.0, and I couldn't be happier
That's a
because,
great. That's a great grade.
yeah, even though it's a 7.0, it does what I want for the book, which is it presents really, really well. So that's
Yeah.
the other thing that I would say. In the card world, we say buy the card, not the grade, right? In the comic book world, if you're wanting it as art, like you see back here on the wall, you're really looking at presentation as well. But for me, on the more expensive older books, around a 4.0, the No Man's Land 5.60, because you don't see them appreciate as much from what I understand. I haven't actually studied that data, but from what I understand, from like in terms of how much a 4.0 may eventually jump up. And
Mhm.
otherwise, you got to be in your higher end grades. I think across the board in the future, you're going to see your more rare high end stuff actually have the most appreciation long term. And I think we're seeing that across the board in all hobbies.
I can see that. For those who may not know, I don't know.
Mhm.
There just like we talk about population in cars. There's circulation in comic books. When you get something graded, people know how much is out there. So when we start
Mhm.
talking about appreciating over time with higher grades, there's a lot less out there that's at a higher grade.
Well,
We
to
know.
give you an example,
Go ahead.
Well, like I have the first appearance of Spider-Gwen, which is Edge of Spider-Verse #2.
That's a great book. Yep.
But I have the Greg Land variant, which is the 1 in 15 variant. And I think there's like, last check, there's like 100 and something 9.8s, which, you know, the comic book market is a lot bigger than the Marvel card market. But I actually spent more money on my green Spider-Gwen PMG. I paid $9,000 for it.
Okay.
And I paid 6,400 for the first appearance of her in a comic book. And mainly because of the fact that that green Spider-Gwen PMG, that was like only the third one I'd ever seen out of the 10. So I don't even know where the other 7 are.
Mm-hmm.
And that was it. Like I knew my chance to get that card again was going to be really, really limited as compared to the Greg Land. In fact, I think at the time that I bought that card, there was like 2 or 3 of the Greg Lands on eBay I could go buy, you know? And so it's different markets, obviously, but you know, there is a bit more transparency and rarity in the Marvel cards.
So Nikki, I have a friend here, Nikki and Jason. They have a question.
Hey, Nikki.
Can you? Yeah, what's up, Nikki? Can you explain the difference between off-white versus white page when it's the same grade?
Yeah. So this is funny. When I started collecting comic books, I could care less. I was just only focused on the grade.
Mm-hmm.
But as you kind of get deeper into the hobby, you start creating reasons why one's better than the other, right? Mm-hmm. And we see this in the card space as well. Like both can be a PSA 10, but you look in there and one of them's really not true centered. The other one's 60/40 and they have that variance, right?
And I've been learning more about like Beckett grading, you know, subgrades mean a lot.
Well, I've got 200 cards at Beckett right now. I'm excited. I'm curious to see how this experience is going to go. I've graded with Beckett before, but it just seems to me those subgrades are going to maybe be more important in the future. I could be wrong, but
I think the same thing. We both could be wrong, but I think the same thing.
Yeah. But in terms of white to off-white, I think there's a sense that if a comic book is white pages, it's been preserved better than the discoloration that occurs over time with the off-white. And it seems to me that view is held throughout whatever age comic book it is, because there are white pages of 1940s books that if they were specifically and carefully cared for, and therefore a white pager will get, you know, a higher premium, so to speak, in terms of what the market would pay for it.
So let me ask you this, right? We get in the comics. We talked a little bit about how to store your comics, what temperature, light, things of that nature. Let's dive deeper into that because it is important. Like even after you grade a comic, there is still a condition sensitive kind of scenario you need to have your comics in. Can you speak to that?
Right. To some degree, maybe not at a scientific level, but just simply stated, temperature as temperatures go up and down drastically, it causes things to expand and contract, to move, so to speak. And so, you know, these things are slab, but they're not like always fully pressed where there's no chance for movement, and they still will move. Like nature's forceful, right? And then with light, particular light, it'll fade out the comic book over time. And so the way in which you store them is important. That's why you will see a lot of people that have rare special books that they only store them in the dark in you know, some type of file or shelf or whatever to keep it out of the light, to keep it special. And that's even with artificial light, you got to be careful with. I don't know which is worse, you know, whether it be LED light or soft light or that kind of stuff. But I imagine a quick Google search may give you that answer. CBCS and CGC have made improvements on their slabs over time to make them more resistant in terms of like UV resistant. And so they're steadily, I think, aiming to improve that to protect the books.
Do you see different market values for graded comics with those two major?
Absolutely. Yeah. So I would, and just a quick comparison for our sports card or trading card friends, CGC is the PSA of comic books. And what I mean by that is they just routinely sell at a higher price for the same value, where CBCS, which is owned by Beckett, Beckett owns CBCS. they're just not quite getting the same values for the same grade or same price for the same grade.
Is there information out there? People talk about cracking slabs and taking a BGS to a PSA. Have you seen evidence that if you open up a grade about one?
I think with like SGC to PSA and so forth and so on, like there was a belief that at one time, and it may still be true, but at one time, if CGC was grading harsher than PSA, there are occurrences now where it appears that PSA now may be grading hard, but who knows? Because these are individual humans that are doing this at some point.
Yes.
But with CGC and CBCS, there's a view in what you would call the head graders. And it's a really actually small community, as I understand it, of these people that are really highly respected and kind of lay out the rules for grading and for particular books and errors and things of that nature. And CBCS has maybe the most respected for your long-term collectors, unless something's changed since 2000, because that's the last time I actually had this information was 2020. That's what I meant to say, not 2020. And where CGC, their head graders maybe were not as viewed as strong as the CBCS. But even though that belief is like underlining with the experts, the market still chooses CGC for the same grade.